Hello and welcome to Splunk.tv. I'm Josh Atwell. I'm your host for the Post-Keynote Recap. We just finished up the opening keynote for Conf 2021. And today we have a series of special guests that are going to be here to give us information about what was just announced. We're going to get some analysis. And I want to lead with a kind of forward-looking statement because we will be talking about things that were announced during the keynote. So we want to make sure that you're not making any purchasing decisions about things that are happening in the future. You should be buying for what's today. Now that I got all the legal out of the way, let's introduce our guests. We have two great guests leading off with us today. We have Ray Wang. He's a principal analyst and founder of Constellation Research. And we have Matt Ubel, who is a senior security engineer at GitHub. And Matt, Ray, welcome to the show. Well, that's Hal and Birch. They're on a little bit early. Hey, Hal.
Hey,
Birch.
If you want, what's going on, man?
Just clicking the wrong button. It's just live
Right,
TV.
we'll talk to the
It's
viewers.
cool. Yeah, we're just getting our notes together over here. We're very excited to come on soon.
No, that's
Not
fine.
yet. Not yet, but soon.
And now
We are
back
excited
to
now.
Josh.
Hell,
You have to change the video, or we have to keep talking. We know how this
I know.
works.
Yeah.
So for everybody watching, we are going to go to Ray and Matt, and then we were going to kick over to Hal and Birch, but apparently we clicked the wrong buttons.
That's fine. That's fine. We
gonna sit here
love the
talking.
mistakes.
All right, here we go.
All right.
Okay, now we've got it under control. This is why we don't give me access to any of the buttons. We're now here with Ray, with Matt. As you can tell, we run an amazingly tight ship here. It's beautiful and it's nonlinear. So, Ray, first off, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great here in Dubai, checking out Conf, and it's been amazing to see what's been going on. So, how have you?
Oh, wow, Dubai. Well, thanks for staying up with us and being available. That's what, 8-9 hours?
I have no idea. Maybe it's
Perfect.
13.
Awesome.
So,
All right, and our other guest is Matt Ubel. Matt, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Josh. Glad to be here. Checking in from North Central Ohio, which I have nothing more to say about.
Perfect. And so if we have any viewers who are not clear, can you please explain your amazing fez?
Yeah, I think I can mostly get it in frame here. There we go. I'm a 6-time member of the Splunk Trust, which is a community
ooh.
MVP program. And yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. All right. And I apologize if you hear any clicking. I had to move my notes, and that's just how it goes sometimes. All right. So, fellas, we are here. We're going to talk for about 15 more minutes, and I really want to dig into some of the announcements and some of the things during the keynote. Obviously, very interesting. We're doing this virtual again, but it was very much live. It had some in-person elements. And I don't know, personally, I enjoyed the way that they laid out the program. It felt like you could have been looking at one of the massive screens or been in a big exhibition hall, yet still sitting in your pajamas. So Ray, what, from your standpoint, what was the big impact for you from the opening keynote?
Yeah, I mean, you can't overemphasize cloud and really how much Splunk is in the cloud today. We see that, our customers are telling us that Splunk is basically at the heart of the data plane in every single customer. And that's really interesting because it's now mission critical. This isn't something that it's non-trivial, whether you're doing anything from security, whether you're trying to do monitoring and trying to do threat detection or anything in automation. This whole notion of having lots of data, it's really about getting to the signal to noise, right? How do we get out of all that noise in the data and find the things that matter? And then more importantly, it's really about how we get to automating precision decisions, right? Getting the false positives out, getting the false negatives out, and really being doing that at scale. And that's really, when you walk out of here, you're like, oh, cloud partnerships, new product announcements, more importantly, right? Observability and open telemetry coming in, right? There's some interesting things that we keep hearing about that customers are dealing with massive challenges as they're managing their digital transformation efforts.
Yeah, absolutely, Ray. No, I appreciate that. And then I got to ask. So, Matt, with you, with what Ray was just outlining, being as a customer, as an end user, I assume you're feeling these pains of being in the cloud and managing all these massive amounts of data and keeping all those environments secure. It probably resonates personally for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely right. I mean, it's one of the things early on was this kind of the talking about how much sort of like data, I guess, has kind of exploded over the course of the last couple years, and so it's certainly the case that there's more to work with than ever before, and so that having all these tools to be able to do that is increasingly important in that same way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Matt, I'm going to stick with you for a minute. What was like the biggest takeaway for you from your perspective as a customer, an end user, as a Splunk Trust member? Was there that wow moment or that component that you were really excited to hear about?
I'm a bit biased on this. One of the things that I was really happy to see was a shout out for ideas,
Mm.
which is kind of something that I, internally, like as a customer, as a community member, I was pushing for have been really happy to see that become more realized over the last couple of years for like enhancement requests and getting more feedback and actually see these things come into the platform. So that was one thing that I noted in particular.
Yeah, I think combining that with like Splunk Base and the capacity for the community to have a contribution and help guide the direction of how the product can be utilized and expanded upon and improved upon. Ray, from your perspective as an industry analyst, I know you see a lot of companies who are making transitions to be more cloud forward or SaaS forward. How important is it from your perspective for organizations like Splunk to be incorporating things like ideas and Splunk Base and making their platform a little more flexible and extensible for their customers to utilize?
Josh, definitely, right? I mean, customer feedback is the heart of everything. Being able to get those ideas in place, being able to innovate, being able to share that's all part of improving the products, really getting closer to the customer. Customers want that, right? They want to be able to know that, their ideas are going to show up in the future products. Their ideas are going to be part of that knowledge base. And more importantly, that they're being listened to. And so I think it's really important.
Thanks. Now, before we kick over to Hal and Birch and let them give us kind of a technical deep dive on some of the things that were discussed and giving their perspective, I want to ask, there was a big moment there, I thought, where they talked about the workload pricing, moving away from ingest for Splunk Cloud customers, moving, focused on a workload pricing standpoint. Ray, from your experience and what you're seeing, how impactful do you think that's going to be for Splunk customers and just the adoption and utilization of Splunk going forward?
I think it's an important way to actually look at adoption. This customers are being, think about workloads and the way people actually use their workloads today. I mean, you want to be able to match pricing to how customers are using the product. That's the first thing. And so when you do that, you're in a good spot. When we look at traditional pricing, there's multiple ways to do this, right? I mean, you can price by user, you can price by, an engine, you can price by the platform, right? And it's really about finding the right model between what is simple, right, or what is actually more granular and actually getting closer to your usage. And I think customers are going to look at all different models, but I think this is an important piece of pricing that's going to change the way customers look at usage and also getting new customers to really adopt.
Thanks, Ray. Now, with Matt, also talking about pricing, obviously pricing comes up in conversations with any product that you buy. How impactful do you think that's going to be for you in your organization? Not expecting you to lay claim. It's just your perspective on your ability to function as an end user and to be able to adopt all the capabilities that Splunk's offering.
Yeah, this the workload pricing option is super important for. I think this was sort of explicitly called out, but like having more flexibility. The ingestion pricing has been around since the beginning, and there's a lot different sort of use cases for Splunk in some ways where, as a customer, it's a good thing to be able to evaluate these different licensing options now that not that there's more than one option or more than two options. It's I think really helpful.
Awesome, thanks. All right, now we're going to take a break in this programming. We're going to hand it over to the Splunk Talk fellas, Hal and Birch, who you met briefly earlier. We're going to get their perspectives for the next little bit. All right, let's get it over to Hal and Birch.
Welcome back to Splunk Talk, the podcast that's all Splunk and no junk. I am still Birch, and that is still...
Yep, I'm still Hal. Hello there.
Good. Hello there.
How you doing, Birch?
Well, I'm a little taken by all the great things that we just saw. I was trying to take notes, and I think I have so many wonderful ideas that I want to talk about from the things that we heard that we're not going to have enough time to go over all of them. But I said the word ideas. I think that might be a great place to start because we just heard a little bit about that in the last segment. I will start off by just saying what I always say about ideas. I love it. I'm really glad I got some time on the main stage there in the keynote because we are a much bigger company than it was when I was a customer. Back in the day, I used to I'd just talk to a PM at Conf or I'd email them. But now there's so many balls in there. There's so many things. That those
now the only way that
don't
you
have
can
the same,
really directly contact a PM is like by emailing p.ogden@splunk.com, for example. That's about the only way you can do it.
Yeah, and so ideas like blows my mind because now we have this ability where like if you come up with a feature enhancement, you post it out there, other people can vote on it, can collaborate on it, and it just brings that entire conversation to the forefront. So ideas.splunk.com, that was something I was really excited to see. What was something you were excited to see?
I like when Doug, Sean, Garth, and Teresa, the others, they get into some of the numbers. So a couple that I happen to note along the way. Let's see. When the gentleman from AWS came on the stage, he said that they have, and this was in the security context, 50 petabytes a day of data that is generated. Now, that's just a crazy number. What do you do with that number? Well, not all of it is data that they needed to bring into the platform. The number that they that they got down to was 500 terabytes a day. So just the massive amount of data that AWS generates and uses for security. Think about this stuff is complex. Like software is hard. Okay, the ability to build a system, and I was a systems engineer going back 15 years before I even joined Splunk. Just the physics involved, the computer science involved to build a system to process that much data, moving the bits, right?
We take it for granted now.
Yeah. But look in the context of things about how much work it is required on our part in order to build a cloud platform to be able to scale to those types of needs for one customer. We have to do it for a wide variety of customers. And one of the other things.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
no, I was
that
just
was one of the
about,
first
we might as well just talk at the same time. No, I thought I think you positioned nicely when you talk about they start at this giant scale and they get down to like 500 terabytes per day or whatever the number might be. That filtering made me think of ingest actions. Was that something you were about to go into?
We could do that together.
Yeah.
But first, I wanted to shout out to. We'll get there. I wanted to mention we got a couple of people in chat. Now we're streaming live on 3 platforms: Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn, and I see one gentleman from India checking in. Probably 2 of them actually looking at that name. Doug, he's as a friend and coworker, and Mati L. I don't know what that means exactly, but they're excited to see us, so that's cool.
Yes, they are very excited to see us.
But yes,
hi Ashik and Rashab. Yeah. Ingest actions. That was cool.
So
I mean, this is something that's bit like the use case they said about social security numbers. That's a classic one. I mean, it's like I love that. I love Joe Cousins like getting out of the market, all these groceries, and Mr. Burns says, "I want everything in one bag, and I want the bag to not be heavy." And it's like we did that. We're saying like, here, you can have the data without that PII, without that personally identifiable information being exposed to everyone. But you could also still have the original copy of it for backup if you need it. And I always thought of that as like that grocery bag thing. Like, oh, we can't possibly do both of those things at the same time. That was cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like having your cake and eating it too. One of the cool things is that it's built on top of the core platform. So some of the concepts are ones you might be familiar with today. You know how to do them, but it was hard to do them. So what we're doing is kind of making that easier, providing a user interface, and then the routing to S3. That's brand new. So customers can check this out. It's going to be in preview now or beta now. So you'll be able to get some hands on that very soon. I'm excited about that. It makes you, and kind of thinking about later in the talk when Teresa got the stage and talked about workload pricing. If you want to do cool things with Splunk, which we want you to do cool things with Splunk because we think it's valuable and powerful. If you want to do those, but you're like, okay, the way that the pricing works kind of prevents me from bringing in the data. Well, now you've got multiple options, and one of those is having the ability, kind of like a traffic cop, to be able to say what's going to go in the platform and what isn't. And then on the other side, when it comes to the commercial terms, it's like, okay, let's just kind of change the game and price these things differently. And that's important to a lot of customers.
That was cool. Do you know more about ingest actions? So like from a
I know all of
technical perspective, you know all about it. Does that happen at the edge, or is that data coming to Splunk and then being rerouted?
Yeah. The way that I'm going to answer that is going to be calling back to the terms how Garth was using it. So
Okay.
Garth had several key kind of themes that he was speaking about it at different parts. No, my bad. It was just Sean. I'm looking at my notes. Sean was talking about machine learning, serverless, global scale, and then edge. Now he had a meaning of edge there. So if we're going to be, specific about it, no, ingest actions doesn't work to the edge. It doesn't work where the car, is on the track. That's edge, like the McLaren edge. And you can think of a lot of cases in data processing where this edge would apply. I have a tractor out in the field. I've got a sports car on the track,
Or
no,
like
we're not
I
talking
have a
about
rock
that.
and roll band named U2. I have a guitarist named The Edge. Like there's a lot of
Actually, he's the
applications for The
bass player,
Edge.
to be specific.
The bass
It's
player?
Bono with the lead guitar. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah. Now you know. I mean, this was a great place to learn that.
the more
Ingest
you
action
know.
runs in your Splunk environment, wherever that is. So if you have it, in your data center, you're running it BYOL in a cloud service provider, it will run there. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, I'm excited about the data flow. Speaking of things I'm excited about, there was another thing. I awarded points during the keynote. I think it was Garth earned points for using the phrase mammalian brain. I was really enjoying that. So many other topics. Community got a shout out there. I always love talking about that platform because when I was a Splunk admin, and I encourage all admins to do this, like you can get an email with a question, but you might be in meetings. It may take you a while to respond, and then that's just like your opinion, your response, your limited knowledge. But when you tell people, you know what, post it on community, and I'll follow you on there. Now you know that, well, I have a whole pool. This entire community is out there helping me answer this question and giving me inspiration and ideas that I may not have thought of as the best answer. So it's like faster and richer than if you're just having these one-off conversations. So I was glad that got a shout out in there.
Yeah, I don't want to let that one pass. I have to say something about community also.
Oh, lay it on.
Is that okay? All right, cool.
Do it.
No,
well,
it's
I
like,
look up about the edge.
I mean, any company can make software. Okay, if the software is compelling and many people can see that, that's when you start to have the community kind of form up around it. And if you see a company, if you're kind of like evaluating software, right? You're like, hey, I'm a buyer. I've got a budget. Blah blah blah. Okay, that's one thing. Those are important. The features. But man, you also have to look at the community. You have to see, what do the people that use this day to day, run it, every day, make this thing, build this thing out, help it be successful. What do they think? And do they actually, go out of their way to help their fellow customers, community members, whether it's, in a technical fashion or totally non-technical, like maybe they're, doing Habitat for Humanity together and those kinds of things. Yeah, that's pretty special.
Yeah. I
So
agree with you. I think it's a lot of like our company values of like being passionate. Like that is a lot of in our culture. The other thing that's interesting, a little tidbit, David Howell Evans, that's the name of the Edge. He is the guitarist. Don't try to trick me.
Okay, fine. We should have arranged for trivia questions to be asked on air. So I will solicit that from the viewers in chat.
Yeah.
Feel free to ask us trivia questions. We are going to probably get them wrong, and that might also be amusing.
Yeah. Adam Clayton, that's the bassist. All right, back to Splunk. No junk.
All right. Okay. So what else? I was looking through the list of the things that were kind of coming out or have been announced. The things that we can kind of like be a little specific about as far as opposed to the far future stuff where we can't really do anything about. So ingest actions was a great example where we can kind of get into some of those features because they're going to be in customers' hands soon. Another one, the work that we're doing in the security realm, risk-based alerting, integrated threat intelligence, the Splunk intelligence management platform.
Yeah, can you unpack that a little?
No. Yeah, I mean,
okay. We'll just list off key terms.
Well, no, it's funny because I actually was writing down acronyms, and at some point I realized if I don't understand these acronyms either, that's gonna be a problem on air. Yeah,
well,
but yeah, risk-based alerting.
Or that's a call to action that we should attend some sweet breakout sessions where they talk about these things.
It is good. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. But risk-based alerting is not a new concept. What we're doing new is bringing it into the platform kind of as a native feature and helping you to build that out yourself. And it's something we've iterated on over the past, I don't know how many years, maybe a few years in ES, enterprise security.
Yeah.
Where we know that you have data, we know that you have alerts, and then when you get by the time you get to ES and you've built all these kind of these correlations together into correlation searches, you have notable alerts. Well, not all of them are equal. Let's take some context about this information and use it to weight things up and down. And one of the ways the lenses you might look at is the risk. So risk-based alerting helps you take that notable event and bump it up to the top if it needs to be, because there's a higher risk here involved. So let me get one level more specific. Maybe there are a series of bad password attempts at a workstation. Okay, and then there's a successful login attempt. Okay, so if that is, and that's very routine, right? This is Monday morning kind of thing. But if it happens a lot across a random set of user accounts in a very, very short amount of time, especially if it's not Monday morning, well, then that's more important. Also, if it happens to an executive's laptop,
that's the one I always think of. Yeah,
then it's
my laptop is not equal to my CEO's laptop.
Yeah. So that's what risk-based alerting is about. You've had the capability to do some of these things with a large amount of effort. Well, to some amount of effort in enterprise security. Now we're just kind of like helping you.
It's like more turnkey now. You don't have
more turnkey. That's probably the best way to put it. Combine that with the threat intelligence.
Yeah, I always kind of thought, like for me, when I try to think about like what's the value add of things like enterprise security, ITSI, and it was always like you could do a lot with the core platform, but you had a fragile thing that like that admin had to own and update and so forth. And a lot of these things like introducing risk-based alerting or like anomaly detections or all that like rich new product is essentially commoditizing these otherwise complex things. And now your end users, it's democratized it. They can now do these things too. So that kind of hit home for me when you were saying, risk-based alerting, it's now making it more trivial for everyone to manage that instead of just like the super splunkers in the group.
And that reminds me what Sean was saying about machine learning. So we have a machine learning, you think about this and if you think about it from a very layperson kind of, marketing blurb, then it starts to look like, things we don't understand, things we humans can't understand. Oh, now, I watched, Terminator. Now I think that they're out to get us, kind of, right? That's where if you don't think it through, it starts to look like that. But then when you think about it, it's just math. And the things that we can optimize the computers to do is to process math very quickly. So machine learning, and in some specific cases like the machine learning toolkit, which has been downloaded, I forget how many thousands of times that they were saying about on stage. I wrote the number down somewhere. That's a big deal, that 100,000 downloads for the machine learning toolkit.
Wow.
That's a big deal if we can help customers do more in the same amount of time, a short amount of time, because these systems that we build, they require people, processes, and technology. The most limited resource of these are the people. So if, going back to the SOC use case, if you have 10 analysts and they can only, and it doesn't have to be security, it could be IT as well. If you have 10 analysts and they can process 90 alerts a day at that kind of like very surface, tier 1 kind of aspect, that's all they can do. So to do more, you have to hire another person. Well, what if you can actually give that person some kind of superhuman powers, so to speak, to kind of increase their productivity? So that's what we're all about when we talk about, okay, we're gonna add machine learning features into the kind of the portfolio of products that we have.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I think there's a huge upside with the ways, not only with machine learning, what you can do with the data, but I also get excited about what you can do in terms of usability of the product. So I always fantasize about like how, oh, I see you're, typing this SPL, and things like autocomplete, right? Based on like your cohort, your peers, what types of searches they write. So I'm not saying that that's something that we're announced or whatnot, but just the avenues for machine learning, it really it takes it from math to magic.
Yeah. And Patrick says in chat, he sums it up: software can be useful, but if people can't see the value, then they won't actually adopt it. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of like, enhancing, accelerating, making that value simpler, easier to accomplish. That's what we want to do there in the machine learning area. What else? What are some other things you want to pull out?
Another topic that came up a few times was Splunkbase, and that's a peer of mine's baby. So that's I'm in that side of the house now in the developer ecosystem. So it's been really fun watching the developments there. But yeah, there is a preview mode now. You can check out some new UI around Splunkbase. The new UI provides a lot of avenues for things that we haven't had before, like collections, and starting to have like staff picks and ways of promoting and providing more of a guided approach as you're shopping for different apps and add-ons. Also, recently on Splunkbase was the inclusion of SOAR apps. So it's now not just core platform, and that's a big step. And
so
there's a
make
lot
sure
more
we
to
don't
come
leave
on that.
anybody behind. This was formerly known as Phantom, and now it's Splunk SOAR.
SOAR is, yeah.
And it's, we're just making it better and better, putting a lot of resources behind that.
That's right, yeah. And even the work that we saw in the keynote around playbooks, that was coming out of that Phantom, now called SOAR product. But yeah, that was really exciting. I've heard rumors that that Dan, the PM for Splunkbase, may make an appearance on Splunk TV. Again, not promising anything, but stay tuned for that.
Right.
Yeah. Just heard some rumblings.
For Jillian, but whatever. We'll take Dan.
Yeah.
Dan's cool.
Yeah, we'll take Dan. We'll definitely take Dan. We got some rumors over at the virtual water cooler.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's talk about IT for a little bit.
I want to talk about Bird Olympics, actually, and how I can download that game. That was the APM
was
game.
That the name of it?
Where they were running across the screen.
Hey, it was Flappy Bird 1 year. I think it was like Flapping Pony. I forget what we called it, but yeah.
Yeah. There is a Splunk-based app with that game now, with Flappy Buttercup. Yeah.
Yeah. Buttercup Go. Buttercup Go. That's what it was called.
Yeah. Someone bundled it into a Splunk-based app recently. a very smart developer. But yeah, well, we've got I think this will have to be our last topic. What you're about to share.
Of the three in the IT observability space, which one did I find the most interesting to talk about? I got to pick one. Okay, RUM for mobile, real user monitoring for mobile. So this was a space that Splunk was in a while back, and I love the joke that was shared internal chat. We'll have to. We got to do it. It's RUM for mobile. Okay. Well, what did we last do this with? Mint. We should have called
mobile
it
intelligence.
Mojito. Yeah, we should have called RUM for mobile.
Oh, rum and mint, mojito.
Maybe
That's
next
cute.
time, next version. Okay. But yeah, that's basically taking data that is important to understanding the health of the applications on your iPad, on your Android phone, wherever it may be, and actually doing some cool stuff with that, like distributed tracing, being able to profile the data that comes from these metrics as the apps run. Where is it slow? How can I fix that? Some good stuff.
All right. Someone was saying to me recently that we were talking about how TVs, like, it's so easy to get a big TV. We used to watch movies on these like tiny, because they were expensive. We got these massive TVs. No one cares because they're doing everything on their phones, things we wouldn't have never thought of. It's the phone is now such a primary device, having that intelligence from it, from that mobile perspective. That realm there is definitely increasingly important.
Definitely. Big fan of mobile.
Cool. Well, I think I believe that's our time. And then we've got a couple other time slots over here on Splunk TV. So we'll take a look at the broadcast. Stay tuned. Yeah. But with that, we'll throw back to weather and traffic with Josh. Thank you all. Happy Splunking. Enjoy the conference.
Bye.
All right. Thanks a lot, Hal and Birch. We appreciate it, guys. Always great. Hey, make sure everybody, as you're tuning in, keep an eye out for future Splunk Talk. Like they had mentioned, Hal and Birch will be back. But let's bring back Ray and Matt. So, Ray, Matt, we got a little bit more to even dig into. One of the things that hearing from Hal and Birch that I thought was impactful, because they mentioned it from Garth, two components. One, the breadth at which Splunk is getting integrated with various cloud providers, and two, the capabilities of extensibility to utilize the platform the way that customers need to, on top of what Splunk is delivering for value. So, Matt, starting with you, how critical has that been for you and your organization to be able to both have choice about how you deploy and utilize Splunk, and your capacity to, ad hoc do the things that you need to do or utilize capabilities out of Splunk base?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super important for everybody. The cloud provider options become less or even more prominent as time goes on, and it's something that you have various parts of the organization that maybe are going to this provider or that provider, and having all these options to be able to integrate these services in kind of more of a proper paved path sort of way, and get it hooked up to all your other observability monitoring tools is something that I think it's good that there's more to see more focus and emphasis on that from Splunk.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ray, as I think about this, we did some research earlier this year, so I know you haven't been briefed on this research, so I'm going to throw a stat at you, and I kind of want to get your perspective on this. We had 38% of organizations that we surveyed were dealing with scenarios where they were now multi-cloud. They had multiple cloud providers that they were having to manage, and it was not part of any type of strategy. It just happened to them, right? It was just a result, as Matt just laid out. A different group brings up something, and how critical from an industry perspective? Number one, are you seeing that type of scenario? And number two, how critical then is that flexibility and choice, and that breadth of availability?
So, Josh, I'd have to take a look at the research. I actually think that number is much lower than it is. We're talking most companies. We'd probably say it's 47% of companies are in the multi-cloud area, right? I got my AI ML sitting in GCP. I've got my apps all sitting in AWS, and then I got stuff, storage in Microsoft Azure. It's very common, right? Especially what's going on. My Microsoft 365 and other things are sitting there. So we expect that, right? But it's really about getting to a single plane. People want to be able to do that. What I was really excited about was the ingest actions, because a lot of my data is in motion. I've got to figure that out. Flex index is another important piece, right? We've got to figure out how to ingest and search and do this cheaply. Otherwise, it gets really expensive over time. And then, people want to be able to do smart store. And that was kind of interesting on, being able to actually, drive down the cost of, scaling my storage costs, which is, one of the big areas. But then there's also other cool stuff. Like I love federated search, right? People want to be able to get that. They want to find everything real quickly. And that's where the dashboard comes into play, which really helps out. And then, I don't know, you're right. People want to watch their dashboard, not on a big screen. I do, but people are doing it on their mobile devices. And that's kind of crazy, but it's also kind of cool. You can do it anywhere. So I think that's kind of important. And I think it really comes back to the point that, Splunk is definitely in the cloud. It's handling multi-cloud. And more importantly, you can use this platform almost anywhere. And the improvements in the platform is what's driving partners to be super excited.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. You made me think of something else that comes up, and I anticipate I want to see some head nodding from both you two and the audience. But as we adopt, even in our daily lives, right, even looking at what we're doing with our mobile phones, as we adopt all these different tools and these different platforms from different providers to provide complementary services or to fit specific needs, I mean, that's a lot of distributed management. And I think, I continue to see this growth and this this desire to consolidate all of that management, get off that swivel. How important do you think then is it for organizations looking at how they modernize the way they do security or make improvements in how they deliver operations, whether it's for a traditional environment that's moving to the cloud or to a more modern cloud native development environment? So, Ray, how critical are you thinking that is for evaluation of how people want to move forward? Because they definitely touched on it multiple times during the keynote.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. I mean, this is kind of where the future is headed, and so the more we can actually plan for it, the more we can actually prepare in advance, the better off we're going to be, right? And I think that's super important. Having that roadmap, having understanding where security plays an underlying role, being more proactive about it, and dealing with the fact that your attack surfaces are all over the place.
I'm glad you kind of finished up with the attack surfaces, because that's just a great handover to Matt. Now, Matt, as a security focused,
Matt is all about attack surfaces.
You're all about attack surfaces. I mean, there's got to be a Splunk T-shirt just for attack surfaces. I mean, how does this, how do you view this? What kind of impact are you running into? Where as we mentioned earlier, lots of tools, lots of places everywhere. How is this helping you out?
So I was thinking about, I think Garth mentioned and Birch pointed out to this idea of talking about the neocortex. By the way of, it made me think of, we as humans, we can hold so much sort of things in our minds at once, and so we have to increasingly rely on automation and sort of set and pay paths that are delivered through this automation in order to make sure that we are, putting out consistent infrastructure, consistent configuration, and then have consistent hooks through our observability and monitoring tools, so that we get all that stuff back into Splunk and build these dashboards and make sure that we got all everything's green and we have all the configs correct. And it seems to me increasingly the only way of doing it at scale, for sure.
I think you just laid out a perfect segue to the last thing, or one of the last things I really wanted to dig into. So in my background, automating data centers, I've made a whole individual career on that. I really wish I would have wrote down the number, because I thought it was impressive. But when they talked about how they were automating their response to threats, it was 18 months, thousands of hours of time saved by doing the automation. how impactful, Matt, how impactful is the implementation of automation and the work that you're doing in order to keep your environments secure and stay on top of these threats?
I mean, it's sort of, I guess, beyond critical.
Yeah.
You know, we just for the simple fact that that there is something of a pressure in the industry for, to hire, to get more people involved in working with the systems, and in a lot of ways, automation is just strictly necessary there. I mean, because we have in some cases strict limitations on talent and people to work with these infrastructures. So yeah, I mean, it's the only way in some ways.
Yeah, I think you bring up a point, and you lead to something that I run into regularly. So anytime I'm having conversations about automation, I'm making people mindful that it's great that you know how to do something, but anytime you're in that workflow, that you're physically doing something inside of a process versus it being automating, you're now a bottleneck. You're never going to operate as quickly, as consistently, and as effectively as an automated workbook or workflow. So it's good for an organization just to be able to be responsive to get that automation in. Ray, switching to like the industry view, I'll admit, I started doing a lot of major data center automation like in the mid 2000s. Worked on books and podcasts and did all this stuff, pushing people to get, hey, you got to automate. Got a lot of pushback. Wasn't seeing a whole lot of investment. The move to the cloud and infrastructure as code and these desires to automate your development pipeline, that helped a lot. But I'm still skeptical. Are you seeing this strong adoption of automation technologies and automation practices in the market and with your customers that you work with?
For the customers we're working with, definitely they are doing that. And I think the way to look at this is a couple ways to look at automation. First, there's 4 questions you got to ask. And it doesn't matter where you are in your CI/CD process or AI ML ops, or even if you're just automating general like business processes. One, when are you going to do full intelligent automation? And that's like the equivalent of everything's running on its own. Great example, if you go to an airport, trains run on their own, right? I mean, those carts move on their own. There's no conductors. They're moving on their own. There's no accidents, right? The cause of most accidents are human error, right? Conductor was asleep. Conductor fell, conductor was on a mobile device. Conductor was drunk, right? So that's the first question. The second question is, when do we actually augment the machine with a human? And that's where we figure out exceptions, right? False positives, false negatives, they pop up. Hey, why did you break the rule? How come you didn't follow the protocol? Hey, what? Why is there an exception here, right? And we learn from that. That's how we get the higher precision. And so we get the 98% accuracy in manufacturing. We're like, yeah, that's pretty good, I guess. And then you get the 98% accuracy in healthcare, and you're like, oh, no, we can't do that, right? Because your doctor's only 87% accurate. But hey, what the hell? It's a machine. We expect better, right? And then we get to level 3. The third question we ask is, when do we augment the human with the machine? And that's when we empower people with insights so they can make faster decisions and really win on decision velocity. And then the last piece is really, when do you trust human judgment? And that's a very important question, because if you don't have a place where human judgment is, you add human judgment there, then everything's running automated. There's no controls in the place. You can't insert a human into the process. So we're going to have to decide when we do that in every one of these. And then just like autonomous vehicles, there's 5 levels. There's basic automation, right? That's kind of like cruise control. Things are moving around. Great. You still have to brake. You still have to steer. Then we get to some level of machine automation, which is not bad, right? That's kind of autopilot. But, if you come up to a stoplight and there's no car in front of you, the autopilot's going to blow through it. So you still got to have some human intervention in place. But then at some point, we're going to get to, where these things are actually kind of autonomous, right? Level 3 is kind of interesting. Machine jumps in and says, hey, you're backing up, you're braking, suddenly, burk, hey, what's going on in the back? Oh, an object, a kid, another car, right? It jumps in and does its own thing. And at some point, we'll get to some level of humans are optional, and then some level where humans are unnecessary, right? We're somewhere between level 3 and 4, and in a lot of processes today. And you need that in order to be able to win.
Oh man, I'm suddenly concerned that I'm not going to be necessary anymore. It's funny. I had this conversation previously. We were talking about automation and talking about AI, and and as Hal pointed out, ML, it's math, right? A lot of it's old math. Like, it's math that we just didn't have the capabilities with machines and computers to really effectively solve for that and do those sortings and things like that. AI very much being I feel great today, especially as I solve these problems. We're not really seeing that yet. We still got some time there. But in the conversation, it's like, is the computer on the Star Trek Enterprise, is that AI? And I say, I don't think it is. You still have a ensign or a helmsman. You still have the captain giving orders. Everybody who is, firing torpedoes, they're still having to input instructions. The system is just really, really smart about being very accurate and concise and consistent in doing it. So, I think that's more the world that, to your point, that's what we're moving for, is how do we augment human capabilities and augment that capacity going forward? And that's kind of a core component of like AI ops, for instance. And I'll always say that we don't hear enough about AI ops, because I really want us to be diving a lot more into that entire workflow, right? Of being able to see incidents and identify them, learn from them, report to the people intelligently, give them the information they need, and then help automate those responses. So moving forward then, and Matt, I'll go to you. Moving forward, like, what do we as Splunkers, Splunk enthusiasts, potential Splunk customers, like, what do we need to be thinking about the most as we go into 2022, right? Oh my God, how is it already this close? So we're getting ready to go into 2022. Like, what's at the top of your mind as you go into the new year?
I mean, it kind of relates to what we were talking about earlier with the presence that we're all having in various cloud infrastructures and other pockets of infrastructure out there. Is we should strive to get all of this stuff sort of hooked up and integrated with the larger sort of systems that we operate to be able to understand what these spaces are doing. In security, there's a lot of talk about the various techniques to do detections and forensics and investigations, but fundamentally, it kind of comes down to what's on the network and who's operating on the network. And if you ever have a blind spot in those ways, your security posture is degraded in that way. So that's something that's been on my mind.
Okay. Yeah. And I doubt you're the only one. In fact, I was really excited to hear Teresa lay out what we're doing in order to better support our government customers and partners that we're working with the new requirements that come in to help our nation, maintain its security posture. I anticipate we're going to see a lot more of stuff like that in years to come. That's my speculation. That is not an official Splunk stance. I'm just calling it like I see it. Okay. Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you. And Ray, from your perspective, right? I mean, you're an analyst, you're a researcher, looking to the future and looking at what's coming. Like, what's the big thing that you're seeing based on what you hear today? What do you think that you're going to be having the most conversations about going into 2022?
Yeah, I think Matt is completely right there. We start there, and it's really about how we incorporate AI ops, ML ops, observability into almost every business process. Today, it's very IT centric. I think we're going to see it much more business centric as people see the value of those outcomes. And we start out with 7 spectrums of outcomes. We start out with, hey, what's going on? We get perception, and we're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Then we start getting notifications, and that's neat. We start filtering that information, and then at some point we get to recommendations, right? And that's where it gets interesting, right? We can take those recommendations, take them to action. Now we have something that's very powerful. And then at some point we can automate those recommendations. And once we get that going, that's where we get the flywheel effect. That's where we start capturing information, spinning up insights, building up the knowledge base, right? We then have what we call business graph on the back end. We can start doing predictions. We can anticipate threats before they happen. We can anticipate errors. We can anticipate downtime. And that gets really important. And then we can finally take that information when we get to level precision, we can actually deliver on prevention, right? And preventing a disaster from happening. And so that's where I want to see that going to the future, where we got enough data to be able to make those decisions. And it's not like, oh, we got some information over here, got a cool algorithm. That doesn't help. I got to have massive amounts of ingestion to be able to figure this out so I can get to high level precision.
I think you're spot on, and it's going to be really interesting to see how, for instance, Splunk customers continue to adopt our technologies, and I'm really excited to hear more stories like we heard with McLaren and our customers and how they're being successful, and I think we're going to see a lot of people.
Yeah, Walmart. That was a good story on Walmart.
Oh, yeah, the Walmart one was fantastic, so I think we're going to be hearing a lot more of that. With that, Ray, Matt, Thank you so much for your time today. Huge thanks to Hal and Birch as well from the Splunk Talk guys, having them bring their insights. Thank you for your time. And hopefully everybody who's viewing, reach out to Ray, reach out to Matt, let them know, and have a conversation and continue this conversation. But I want to do a couple of quick programming notes as we close out this broadcast. Coming up at the top of the next hour here, we've got a game of pedantic trick questions about Splunk history and InfoSec happening right here on Splunk.tv. After that, we'll be following it with BTS, Behind the Shirt, the Splunk community show that I co-host with my friend and community manager, Renee Woods. And we'll be doing Splunk Innovators with Hal and Birch early this evening if you're on the Eastern time, late afternoon if you're on Pacific. And then we're going to close out today with me doing a recap of the day with analyst Rich Mogul and a surprise guest. So thank you very much for tuning in for the post-keynote recap. My name is Josh Atwell, and this has been Splunk TV. Stay tuned for more broadcasts. Do keep in mind that if you want to stay on top of everything that we're doing, visit us at Splunk.tv. You will see links to all the platforms that we broadcast, YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn Live. Pick your favorite. Make sure you subscribe so you get notified every time that we go live, both this week and in the weeks to come. Thank you very much.